Hey guys, Logan from Popular Woodworking here. Today is an exciting day. It's a day I've been waiting for a long time, and I will tell you why after this. So because I know many of you guys probably don't recognize me, I figured I would give you a really brief intro to myself. Like I said, my name is Logan. For the last couple of years, I have been an editor at Woodsmith magazine. And early this year, in early 2021, the editor-in-chief at our sister publication, Popular Woodworking, decided he was going to pursue a career in a different field, and I took the reins over at Popular Woodworking. So I'm really excited to share with you guys here on the channel, here in the magazine, stuff that I'm interested in, stuff I enjoy, and hopefully get Popular Woodworking back to some quality, traditional type content. But that doesn't mean we're not going to have some fun, cool stuff, and that's what I want to show you today. So why am I excited about today, and why am I, is this a day I've been waiting for a long time? Well, there's two things. One is this girl. I'll show you. She's right behind me. So this here is my Norwood HD36 Sawmill. And today is what? Today's May 5th. May 6th, 2020, I finished putting her together. So I have had this sawmill and been running it for the last year. And it has been phenomenal. I've had so much fun with it. Went through 120 bandsaw blades last year, just cutting a ton of lumber for myself, for other people, and I have had an absolute blast with it. I've changed a couple things about it to make it work a little bit better for me, but otherwise, she's completely stock HD36. This is the version 1. Norwood just released a version 2, and they also released I believe, HD38, so it's a larger cut mill. But I wouldn't trade my 36 for anything. I've had a wonderful time with it. So I'm excited to go through, give her a little bit of love that she deserves, because she has treated me really well this last year. And the other thing, I keep glancing off camera at it, and I'm going to show you what it is. And this is quite honestly the reason why I bought this mill to begin with. So all these boxes behind me, every one of them that says Norwood on them, these are all the hydraulic kit for this sawmill. So today, probably tomorrow, probably the day after that, I'm going to be out here in the afternoons installing a complete hydraulic kit. Because this sawmill right now is manual, which is quite honestly one of the reasons that I decided to buy a Norwood sawmill, was that I could buy the manual version, and then when I'm ready, I could add all of the hydraulics to it. And little did I know, I was going to be ready a year later, because I am doing so much milling that I think adding this hydraulic power pack that's going to give me a couple hydraulic functions on it is going to make my life a whole lot easier, because I am out running this thing in the evenings and on weekends. I'm running it for myself, I'm running it for some arborists that I work with, and I'm running it for a lot of people that I know and a lot of customers that I have met. So I'm excited to take you guys with me today as I install this and give you a little info on the mill. But first, let's take a look at a couple of the small things I have changed in the last year to make this mill work a little bit better for what I do. So the first and biggest thing that I did to this mill, probably a week after I had it up and running, was I added this electric winch. So this is the loading unit on the Norwood. It has these ramps that I don't know, they're not showing up on camera, that go on the tracks off to one side, and then you use a winch over the log and hooking back to the frame to roll the logs up onto the mill. And the hand crank winch that comes with it worked really well, but when you're doing a number of logs in a day, 8, 10, 12 logs in a day, you want some power. So this little Harbor Freight $100 winch was about the best investment I have made on this mill, aside from the mill itself, quite obviously. This little 3,500 pound winch has handled logs, handled oak logs up to 7,000 pounds. It's just unbelievable, because it's not lifting, it doesn't need the full capacity. This thing works great, and I was so glad I added it, and I'm still going to be using it, even though I do have a hydraulic log loader now. The other thing that I did, and this is a minor side grade, let's spin the camera a little bit. Now, one of the other things I did to the mill is I moved the water valve. This is the lubrication tank to keep the blade cool and keep the sap off of it. The stock valve here actually was on the bottom side where this little black stem is. And I moved that. And the reason I moved that is I've put some really big logs on here. I'm talking 38, 40-inch oaks. Now, Norwood says this will handle a 36-inch log, and it will. Anybody that tells you differently did something wrong when they put their mill together. But when you get to those big logs, you run into some stuff, quite literally. And one thing I found is the water valve down here would bump the log as I was making a cut, which was extremely inconvenient because then you have to pull the water valve out and stick your finger on it as you make the cut and then plug the valve back in. So I just bypassed it altogether, plugged that, and I drilled a hole on the side of the tank and put my little ball valve there. That way it's not going to run into anything. And another very, very minor thing that I added was a little tachometer, an hour meter. That way I can kind of keep an eye on the RPMs. If for some reason the engine isn't getting up to full speed, I have a visual of that versus just my ears. So that's what I've done to the mill. Let's take a look at the hydraulics and see exactly what we have to install today. Okay, so what I have is a handful of things. I have a 4-foot extension for this mill. It's on the very end over there. Then I have the hydraulic power pack, and that includes the motor and the hydraulic pump and hoses. Next, I have the log turner. So this is basically a hydraulic chainsaw bar that will come up, lift the log up, and spin it. Then I have hydraulic toe boards to help level the log and compensate for any taper on the log. Then I have the hydraulic clamps and the hydraulic loader. Now I do also have one additional bunk kit, and I've had that for a while and I've never installed it. You might say, oh, why do you need another bunk? But when you start to get to small stuff, trying to cut a 2 or 3 foot piece, you need an additional support in between the stock bunks because they're about 4 feet apart. So I do have that, and I think we'll add that on today too. And then I have a couple other things that I'm going to add that aren't necessarily from Norwood, and I want to show you those. So one of my biggest complaints on this mill is nothing to do with the mill itself. It's more to do with the placement of the tail lights. So you can see those lights right there. Those lights happen to be right in line if you're pulling a board off the end of the mill and the end of the board drops. So I was actually doing some great big old cottonwood for some guy, and I was by myself, and they were big and they were heavy, and so I was dragging them off the end of the mill because they're not in the way. If you push them off to the side, you're either walking over them as you push the mill or whatever. But I was dragging them right off the end, and you can see those things right there. They're right in the line of fire, so they got smashed up a little bit. So what I've done is I have bought a couple of steel trailer taillight boxes that I'm either going to, I haven't decided yet where I'm going to put them, we'll find that out together. I'm either going to mount them underneath with some flush mount lights, so there'll be flush mount lights in steel boxes, or I'll mount them off to the side. Iowa, where I live, doesn't have any regulations on where they have to go. I just have to have them. So I'm going to do that. And I also bought a new wiring harness because I do have that 4-foot extension down here that I'm going to add. I don't know that my current wiring harness will be long enough. Plus, I would like to get away. It has a flat 4-pin on it right now. I'd like to just go to the round 7-pin, and I got a little bit heavier wire. So hopefully the rattling, I probably put 3,000 miles on the sawmill, and I'm starting to get some grounding issues where wires have rubbed through. Aside from those, I have this guy. And this is just a little diamond plate toolbox that, if I had to say there was one other complaint with my mill, there's nowhere to store tools on it. And I think Norwood knows that, and it's something that they've always talked about. Just it's always been pushed to the back burner. So I'm going to figure out if I can figure out a place to put this little diamond plate toolbox. I really only need about 2 sizes of wrenches with me, a few spare parts. I'm planning on keeping a small thing of chainsaw fuel in here as well, just a little 1 pint or 1 quart thing of chainsaw fuel, and probably my grease and lubrication for my kind of daily maintenance stuff. But it would be really nice not to have to pull that out of the bed of my truck every time I'm done milling. So I'm going to see if I can find a place to put this. I'm thinking I might stick it on the tongue, but first I want to get the hydraulic power pack installed and see exactly where the levers are going to land to make sure that this is not going to interfere with them at all. So with that said, I think the first thing we're going to do is add the 4-foot extension. That way we can kind of lay out the rest of the parts and see where everything is going to land. So 4-foot extensions up first, and then we will hit the hydraulic power pack, and then I'm just going to work down this line of boxes and install stuff as we go. So let's see how it goes. So as I start to put some of this together, I wanted to point out a couple of things. The first is that as I'm editing this video, it's late January, early February. The magazine responsibilities really took over a lot of my time, so this video is a little late getting out. And I've really been running these hydraulics over the summer, and I'll make a video about that and my thoughts on them. And overall, they've worked out fantastically. I've been super impressed with them, and they've made milling a lot easier. The second thing I want to point out is that, quite obviously, this video ended up being extremely long. The hydraulics was very straightforward and very simple to put on. I just ended up with a ton of video content. So down in the description, I'll kind of tag some of the highlights on this. So if you want, you can fast forward through, or just go straight to the end where I get to look like a little school kid as I get the hydraulics working for the first time. Now the whole point behind this 4-foot extension isn't necessarily that I need the capacity. Because I'm milling stuff mainly for furniture making, I don't generally have that long of logs. I'm not doing timber framing, timbers or anything. But the point behind this 4-foot extension is to actually push everything back towards the back of the mill just a little bit. In talking to the team over at Norwood, they said the hydraulics function a little bit better if they are shifted back, basically one whole bunk bay. So that's why we decided to add the 4-foot extension. The way that Norwood has designed their mills is such that adding a section of track is pretty straightforward. A handful of bolts release the end cap, and then the new track sections and the new side sections simply slip into place, and then a handful of bolts attach it. So it's a really easy way to increase the capacity of your mill, or add it in case you are adding hydraulics like this. adding the additional extension does require an additional pair of leveling jacks. And leveling jacks are definitely one of the things that take the most time to deploy and set up when I'm traveling to mill. However, I will take this style jack, which is a drop down, and then you kind of use the lever to twist the foot down and level everything, over other mill styles that I've seen that simply have a foot that drops down with pinholes and doesn't have any additional cranks to help level the mill. With this, it does take time to set up, but it's very easy to level everything. You can get the bed of the mill level front to back and side to side, which is really nice. Okay, so there we go. There is our 4-foot extension installed. You wouldn't think that 4-foot would make that big a difference, but it seems huge now. It's gonna be so much harder to back it into people's backyards, but I think it'll be fine. So just taking a look at this, you can kind of see the difference in what a year of running, even though I just pressure wash it, what a year of running looks like versus new tracks. Here's the new, nice and shiny, new cross bunk. And there's the old track, nice and oxidized, and an old cross bunk. So now we're going to strip the rest of the wiring out after I cut the taillights off. We'll strip the rest of the wiring out, and let's see how the power pack goes in there. To power all of the hydraulic attachments, there is a hydraulic pump that pumps the fluid throughout them. And to drive that pump, we require some form of power. And Norwood offers two different options. First, they offer an integrated option.
and I'm not exactly sure what the Norwood style integrated option is, but most other mill options I've seen use the actual saw head power to drive a 12-volt electric motor on the pump, and it does that through contactors on the rail usually. Another option, and the one that I chose, is the auxiliary power, and that is just a little 5-horse Honda gas engine directly attached to the pump. And I'm really glad I went with this option. The Honda motor is really well known. It's known for being super reliable and low maintenance. And this entire summer running it, I don't think I had to pull it more than once to get it started ever. That was hot or cold. It's been fantastic, and I'm really happy I went with that route.
Show you guys what we're looking at. Okay. So the instructions I had for this one were actually, I think, for an older model that you had to install the motor on. But the motor came already installed on this pump because you need something to drive the pump, obviously. So let's show you what we have. So we have motor. It's a little, I think, 5-horse Honda guy right there, and the tank and the pump in between them. And that came already installed onto that aluminum plate down there. And the bracket that's in there had 2 bolts and then a little piece of angle steel. So that clamps on both sides there and holds it. And then we have the control station here, which basically has our loader, up and down on log stops, clamp height, up and down on the log roller. That's engage the chain on the roller, toe board front, toe board rear. So those are mounted to the tongue
bracket with a couple of long bolts. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So that power pack is installed. This is so exciting. So power pack's installed, hoses are hooked up, 4-foot extensions on. So now let's start installing stuff. I don't know which one's going to be best to install first, but the next box in line is going to be the log turner. So let's do the log turner. All right, I changed my mind. We're not going to do the turner first because I want everything centered off of the log loader. I think that makes sense. I mean, obviously I'm going to load the logs centered on the log loader, so the turner, which should be centered on the log, should be centered where the loader is. So we're going to put the log loader on. These two brackets are what connect the hydraulic loader to the mill. And the hydraulic loader consists of really 3 parts. There's a pair of lift arms and then a spanner bar that connects the 2 lift arms to kind of keep them in sync as they're loading a log. You can see that spanner bar laying there. And the loader arms themselves have an inner and outer arm. The inner arm pushes against the ground. The outer arm is actually what moves as it loads a log. And there's a hydraulic cylinder that does the lifting. There's a cylinder on each of the loader arms. And to install the hydraulic loader on the mill, you have to drop each of the legs into the bracket, connect it with a pin, and then slide that spanner bar between them. And if I had to say there was one thing I didn't like about the loader, is the fact that it does need removed every time you travel with the mill. So you can't move around the mill with the loader attached. It needs removed and thrown in the back end of the truck. It would be nice if I was able just to flip it up out of the way and either strap it or chain it to the mill so it stays permanently attached, but it's just not possible to design. But in my opinion, it's a pretty small trade-off for not having to mess around with the winch and ramps and just load logs with a lever. It's super great. Okay, so loader is on, if I can get the tripod out of the way. Let's check the guy out. So these little arms, I think, are to bridge the gap between the bed and the loader once it flips the log up. Let me show you some of the
details that were hard to catch on camera. So there's a quick connect fitting down here that lets hydraulic fluid into the cylinder, pushes the cylinder up, and there is a little breather right there that allows it to come back down, and a T-fitting there that goes all the way up here to the log loader handle. So that's it as far as the loader goes, I guess. Obviously double check everything before I put a log on there and turn it on, but that went pretty quick, even though it's starting to look like it's gonna rain on me. So now that the loader's out of the way, I think we tackle the log turner. So let's tackle that next.
So the turner has this framework underneath it. That's what supports the bar and the hydraulic motor. And then there's a cylinder that lifts the bar up and down, and the motor turns the chain. And after using this for the last 6 or 7 months, it works extremely well. I have seen other style of log turners that use like a pawl or an arm to kind of push and roll the log around. And I think this is just such a better design. The chain has kind of directional teeth on it, so they really grab rolling the log counterclockwise. They don't really grab if you go to roll the log clockwise, which occasionally you need to do, but you can just honestly make a full revolution, not that big a deal. And this little hydraulic bar that has the loader chain on it is super strong. It'll lift up really, really big logs. It'll actually throw them over the log stops. Ask me how I know that. But overall, I've been super happy with this. And this is maybe not the biggest time saver in the world, but this is the biggest back saver in the world. Rolling logs by hand, or even using the winch to roll logs, it can get a little tedious. And with this, just a couple pulls of the levers, and I can flip a log 90, 180 degrees, no issue.
Okay, so here we are the next day. Let's go over. I kind of ran out of memory card space last night, and this was starting to get dark anyways. So let's go ahead and take a look at this hydraulic log turner. Kind of show you guys stuff up close. Kind of what's going on with that.
So the turner here has 2 connections that go to the motor, and that's what actually turns this drive chain. And then there's also 2 connections down here on the cylinder, and that's what raises this arm up and down. Obviously it's up in the up position, there's in the down position, and those guys are routed up to the controls right up there. And I ran the hoses for the motor through the center of the bunk here, and the center of that bunk as well. I don't know if I'm going to leave them there or not. They're pretty easy to change them and reroute them. I might reroute them. I'll wait till I get everything else installed and kind of see how everything lays out. So the last 2 things that I have to install are going to be the toe boards, hydraulic toe boards, and the hydraulic clamps. I think I'm going to tackle the clamps next, and I'm going to probably remove these guys here, which are the manual clamps. I'll probably include at least one of them or leave one of them on, just so I have an option to clamp smaller stuff. And again, that's going to tie into that extra bunk that I'm going to probably install here. So let's go ahead and start with the clamps today. So as I'm installing these log stops, the one thing I didn't realize was going to happen after I installed these was how much time I was going to save just from the clamping and adjusting the log stop aspect of it. I didn't realize how much time I actually walked around the mill, adjusted my clamps, adjusted my stops when they were manual, but being able to do it with the levers has saved me a boatload of time. And the other thing I didn't really realize, and I knew that I was going to be able to use it like this, but I didn't realize how nice and effective it was going to be, is the hydraulic log clamp I can actually use to help roll logs too. So if I ever get in a pinch where I need to readjust the log turner, I can use the clamp to hold the log up, or I can even use the clamp itself to roll over something like a cant where I want to keep the edges nice and clean and undamaged, where the chain turner might damage them a little bit. So right in here I realized that I'm a big dummy, and by positioning those hydraulic lines through the center of the bunks, I put them right in the path of this hydraulic clamp. So I did have to move those. And a smarter man probably would have used some blocking to install this clamp to the bottom side of the mill. I was holding it in place and it's pretty heavy, so smarter man would have used some blocking, would have made it a little bit easier for me. Like I said before, these clamps work extremely well. I didn't realize that the vertical stopping point of the hydraulic log stops is a little bit different than the manual ones. And what I mean is that the manual log stops can be positioned basically to the edge of the track on the non-operator side, whereas these hydraulic ones are actually 4 or 5 inches closer to the operator. And it's not that big a deal, especially when you're using them to stop like a log where you are holding the log on the bottom half of the log. But when you make a cut along the top of a log and roll the log 90 degrees, that cut edge is actually 4 or 5 inches closer to the operator. It's not that big a deal until you are dealing with super large logs where you need every inch of capacity that you have between your blade guides. Not that big a deal because I do keep the manual log stops with me for those instances, but it does position the log a little bit closer to the operator, just something to keep in mind.
Alright, let's see if you guys are ready to see this monstrosity. And I say monstrosity because I have hoses going all over, but once I get everything installed, I'll be able to rearrange and fix them up. So these clamps were definitely the hardest thing on this to install so far. I mean, they're not hard, everything bolts in place, just that they're heavy, and between the log stops, the clamps, the two log stops and the clamp, there are 8 hoses, so there was a lot of hoses that went in here. Let me show you what I have. Okay, so there is a log stop right over there, a hose on top and bottom for extension retraction, same thing over there. And there is a block in the middle of them. That's a flow distribution block. So when you pull the lever, they both raise and then they'll lower at the same time. Same thing, well, not really the same thing, but this is the clamp right here. You can see the mess of hoses I have. I'm gonna have to rearrange everything and get them routed where I want them. But this guy is the clamp head right here. We have a retraction and an extension hose on that arm, and there's an arm underneath, a little hydraulic cylinder that will move this guy in and out. But like I said, once I get everything installed, I think I'm probably going to end up disconnecting a lot of these hoses and rearranging them and routing them so that they don't A, get pinched as I'm working, B, that they don't rub as I'm driving down the road, because there ain't nothing worse than rubbing through a hose, especially a hydraulic hose that's under pressure when it's in operation. So what do we have on here? We have the loader, we have the turner, we have the clamps. Last thing, those 3 boxes right there. Actually, there's only 2 boxes there. 2 boxes that has the hydraulic toe boards. And that is these guys right here. These are the manual versions. They're still hydraulic. They're little hydraulic bottle jacks. I'm hoping it might work that I don't have to take off my current ones. I can just swap them out and add the hydraulic cylinder. But we'll see. So I'm going to open those up and let's see what we have. Just remove this. Throw on the cylinder. So they go like that. And that's it. I was looking at these still on yet. Which is nice because those things are heavy. So rollers are still in great shape. They're a little corroded, obviously, but I'm just gonna do the same thing with, oh, that guy's leaking oil. I'm just gonna do the same thing with the front one. We'll put the fittings on here. The trickiest thing, I think, with this is gonna be figuring out where to route the hoses, because all my hose locations are kind of getting taken up. Now I got a bunch of clamps that came with the power pack that I can use to wrangle some of these, and we're gonna have to wrangle them. But I'm hoping I can run them over, and then hopefully they'll run down through the track right here on that side. So let's see. Okay, done, except for rerouting all of these hoses. So, like I said a little bit ago, those these guys right there were my old ones. I just put the new cylinder on, and then routed the lines through. So now, I think what I'm going to do is take off a lot of my old hardware, meaning my old clamps and stuff, just to get it out of the way. I will probably end up putting at least one set back on. Looking at this bunk right here, or this area between bunks, is relatively clean and clear of stuff. So I may put one more little cross bunk in here. Yeah, but I think first I'm going to get the hydraulic hoses all taken care of, wrapped up, clamp them out of the way, and then we'll test it. We'll see if this thing works. I'm expecting a leak here or there, just from me forgetting to tighten fittings down, especially while I'm trying to run around, move a camera, find parts, answer emails and stuff. So let's see how this goes. Alright, so I left all the hoses loose. I figured I'd fire it up, extend everything to its maximum, that way the hoses are at their longest necessary length, and then I'll clamp them in place, and then I'll kind of wrap up any excess. So, let's see what happens. awesome is that? Oh my god, I can't stop smiling at this. So this is awesome. Now, quite obviously, I knew this would work. Because Norwood's been around forever. I mean, obviously. But this is awesome. I'm going to start this up and show you guys how these work. Everything's in the up position. I'll put it down and kind of show you the different movements on them. There's loose. Knew that would happen at some point. All right, so we are back on our third day, and I've actually finished everything. I know this video is getting a little long, so I figured I would go ahead and take care of the non-Norwood upgrades, so kind of my little modifications, and I figured I would just show you guys those. So let's look at those quick. Okay, so here are the two taillight boxes that I have added with the taillights. And I have a new cable. Move that guy out of the way. So there's a new heavier insulated cable that goes all the way up front to a new 7-pin. Let me show you that. So here is connector box with all the connections and the new 7-pin there. And the other thing I did was I added that diamond plate toolbox, and it actually sits there really nicely. It is mounted on this side. There is a shelf bracket right here. It's just the L-shaped shelf bracket, and then I have a handful of bolts and spacers that go through the front of the frame and connect to the toolbox. And I think this is going to be a really nice thing to have. As you can see, I've already loaded it up. I got my little climbing saw in there, some extra hydraulic fluid, just kind of all the tools that I use generally while I'm milling. And here you can see all my cable ties, or I guess they're not like cable ties, more of cable clamps to keep those hydraulic cables all bundled up nice and neat. And yeah, I think we're gonna probably hook it up to the truck, get the jacks up, remove the loader here in a few minutes. There we go. I think that's going to kind of wrap us up for this video. Just wanted to share with you guys something that I was super excited about, and that was upgrading my mill that I've had so much fun with over the last year. Quite honestly, the biggest thing I'm afraid of now is that because everything is hydraulic power, I'm afraid I'm going to start gaining weight, because I probably lost 20 pounds last year just running the sawmill, just being out in the afternoons all summer long over the weekends. So we'll see if I get squishy-er, I guess. So if you guys like this type of content, please let me know. I would love to hear your guys' feedback. Like I said, we're going to have some big changes, I think, coming to Popular Woodworking, both in the magazine and on video. And I'm looking forward to bringing you guys more video content, because it's something that's been lacking for the last couple of years. There just hasn't been the capability there, but now there is. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comments. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, you can find my email on the Popular Woodworking website. But we will catch you guys here next time. Thanks for watching.